you're thinking, why have Comedy Unleashed booked that bloke off EastEnders? Bit shorter than I thought. I often get that. People, when they see me, they often do a double take. I was coming out of the BBC the other day. There was an autograph hunter at the stage door, and he approached me, and then he had second thoughts. I literally had to chase him down the street, rugby tackle him, pin him to the ground in order to give him my autograph. But I'm actually a journalist. My name's Toby Young, or as someone on Twitter called me the other day, Captain Bellend. I've also been described on Twitter as a cockwomble, a wank spanner and a shit gibbon. And that is the last time I'm letting my kids on Twitter. My main claim to fame is that 2 years ago I was publicly shamed for various grossly offensive things I've said in the course of my 30-year career as a journalist. This was before that became an actual qualification for being Prime Minister. At the beginning of 2018, Theresa May appointed me to the board of a new higher education regulator. The government were looking for someone who was both involved in state education. I'd helped set up 4 free schools. I was involved in various education charities. Looking for someone involved in state education who wasn't left-wing. So it basically came down to me or Mr. Gilbert in the in-betweeners. As soon as I was appointed, the witchfinder generals of the public square set to work sifting through everything I'd ever said or written in the course of my career, looking for material to be offended by, like little offence archaeologists. And it didn't take them long to find it. So in 2001, I wrote a piece for The Spectator called Confessions of a Porn Addict. Seemed like a good idea at the time. So someone screen grabbed that, put it on Twitter, and literally within an hour, headline in the Evening Standard, pressure mounts on Theresa May as university czar confesses to being porn addict. Thanks a lot, George Osborne. I thought you were a Tory. But it wasn't the stuff I'd written so much as the stuff I'd said on Twitter that really got me into trouble. So in 2010, during Red Nose Day, the BBC broadcast this really harrowing documentary about starving children in Africa, and this woman said on Twitter that she found it so upsetting she got through 5 boxes of Kleenex, to which I replied, me too, haven't wanked so much in ages. Someone screen grabbed that and it found its way onto the front page of the Mail on Sunday. Theresa May's disgust at student czar's sordid tweet. Now, it may surprise you to learn this, but Theresa May isn't actually on Twitter, so she hadn't seen the offending tweet, and the Mail on Sunday thought it was so grotesque, so sordid, they couldn't bring themselves to actually reproduce it in the paper. She was due to appear on Marr that morning, and her press secretary, this is a true story, thought, well, there's a risk Andrew Marr might ask her about it, so he'd better read it out to her in the green room in case he did. Absolutely true story. So he reads out the tweet to her, and she's like, I don't get it. A bit like Brexit, Theresa, eh? So the press secretary's like, I think the idea is that he got through 5 boxes of Kleenex in order to mop up all the semen, Prime Minister. She fucking pissed herself! Fell off a chair! No, she didn't. It wasn't the smartest thing anyone's ever tweeted, but then again, it wasn't the dumbest either. That would be, already this morning I've killed a fox with a baseball bat. How's your Boxing Day going? Jolyon quite sensibly stayed off Twitter after that. But he couldn't resist coming back on Brexit Day and tweeting, please don't commemorate this sad day with division or hate. Our most absolute defeat will be to become what we despise. Mate, if you're walking around killing defenceless animals with a baseball bat, I think you've crossed that line. The weird thing about offence archaeology is, why do people go through your entire archive looking for material that they find genuinely offensive and upsetting, only to then disseminate it as widely as they can? Is the idea to try and upset and offend as many other people as possible? I'm sort of reminded of all those people in the commentariat, he got really upset about Boris Johnson, suffered from Boris derangement syndrome during the election, and kept dredging up the joke he'd made in the Daily Telegraph about burqa-wearing women looking like letterboxes. And, to hear James O'Brien... Thank you. To hear James O'Brien... I thought it was going to come out. To hear James O'Brien go on and on about this on his LBC show, it was as though Boris was single-handedly responsible for a wave of Islamophobic hate crime. Now, bit dubious about that, but if that's what you sincerely believe, that just hearing that gag turns you into a swivel-eyed Islamophobe who then starts combing the streets looking for Muslims to victimise, why repeat it every 15 fucking minutes? I don't think you've really got the concept of censorship, mate. There's no place for language like that in British politics. Then shut the fuck up about it, you sanctimonious, pompous twat! At least when Mary Whitehouse was campaigning against sex on television, she didn't say, she didn't whip out a vibrator and say, and this is what I'm talking about. The only politician to stick up for me during the Office for Students imbroglio was Boris Johnson, who tweeted, "Ridiculous outcry over Toby Young. He will bring independence, rigour and caustic wit. Ideal man for the job." Now, Kathy Burke quote-tweeted that and wrote at the top, "He's a cunt and so are you." And Ben de Pere, the editor of Channel 4 News, liked that tweet. I mean, he now complains that Boris won't come onto his show. Mate, you literally called him a cunt. What do you expect? Anyway, after a week of being in the frame, my suitability for the role had been debated in Parliament. A Change.org petition calling for me to be sacked had been signed by 220,000 people, and a Guardian journalist was permanently stationed outside my front door. I would have taken him a cup of tea, but I'd run out of almond milk. If I'd known Constantine then, I would have asked him for some polonium. So I felt I had no choice but to stand down from the Office of Students, but I thought if I stand down, that'll draw a line under the whole affair and I can just carry on with my life, which is a bit like throwing a hunk of raw meat to a shoal of piranha fish in the hope that that will calm them down. It didn't. I then had to step down from the Free Schools charity I'd helped set up. I had to fall on my sword as a Fulbright commissioner, give up my position as an honorary fellow of Buckingham University, and stand back from my day job running an education charity. I literally lost 5 positions in a very short period of time, and I blamed it at the time on the fact that I am a white, heterosexual, cisgendered, Brexit-supporting, Tory-voting male. Like in the intersectional hierarchy of oppression, I'm an apex predator, a super gamma. But the truth is, I'm also a bit of a cunt. And I did think afterwards, I thought, is there any way back from here? I thought I could do a Sam Smith and announce to the world that I'm bi-gendered. But in my case, people would just think that meant I was a prick as well as a cunt. So 2 years later, I've essentially come to terms with the fact that somebody somewhere is always going to find something I've said offensive. But guess what? No one has a right not to be offended. And so I've decided to set up something I'm calling the Free Speech Union, a non-partisan mass membership organisation that stands up for the speech rights of its members. And, I hope that it won't just be for male, pale and stale conservatives like me. Everybody will be welcome. Let's not forget, liberals get cancelled too. Even trans people will be welcome in the Free Speech Union. And believe it or not, I have a lot of time for transgendered and gender non-conforming people. My great-grandfather, true story, my great-grandfather dressed up as a woman once. It was the only way he could get off the Titanic. Thank you, my name's Toby Young. Let's